city was incorporated as Dairy Valley, and it had more cows than people.
This is the cow capital of Southern California. So you used to drive through here and you're driving in muddy streets.
And it was the place you went through en route to some place that really mattered.
A large 9 square miles of basically cows and agriculture.
It was a U shape with artesia right down through the center of it.
I love it. There were more, cows and chicken than people, and looked like the country style.
When my kids were little, I would take them out to see my parents out in Hacienda Heights. They'd be coming home and they go, "Hey, Daddy, we're home, huh?" Because they could smell, they'd be laying down, they could smell the cow dung.
The air doesn't smell that clean, okay?
It smelled bad, dude.
Me and my friends, we do BMX type biking. There was a large mountain that we used to frequent over there in the industrial park. Come to find out years later, it was a mountain of manure.
But still, I think that time Cerritos we knew would be a very, very beautiful city in the future.
When the dairy farmers were here, we had a city manager, a really terrific city engineer. I can't compliment Bill Stuckey enough. And 1 or 2 other employees. I mean, that was it in a little building on Pioneer Boulevard. The former city council met on Thursday mornings at 10 o'clock. And at 10:15, the meeting was over. That was it, because there wasn't that much to do.
It was transitioning from an agricultural dairy community to a suburban community. It was one of the last areas on the LA County line that hadn't grown into a residential community yet.
It was the first 5 or 7 years from 69 to 75, all kinds of changes taking place, obviously, going from a few thousand people and 60,000 cows to the cows are gone. The property is being developed residentially. The streets that used to be 30 feet wide at the most, with a ridge in the middle and drains on the side, and water lines were installed, and it became a city.
The city made the determination that we were going to go into a area where we needed to raise funds.
In short order, you had the makings of a city, and sort of you drive down the streets and you saw, geez, there are trees on the streets. And the idea of having parks every place and opportunities for, then to have a library.
The city was incorporated as a no property tax city. How are we going to raise money? We can't tax the homes because that's the property tax. We can't tax the businesses because that's a property tax. So what's left? There's only 2 big things in your portfolio. One is your home, the other is your automobile. Well, if I can't tax your home, that leaves one. And that's how we got around to the automobile.
Well, I give Gaylord Knapp the credit for the concept.
Gaylord was a great governmental person that had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Very knowledgeable, hardworking, dedicated guy.
He became a very tough negotiator. A lot of these dealers were that close to losing them, and my savior was always Ken Brown.
At times, I think Gaylord had a hard time understanding that there wasn't anything really bad in being fair. You don't have to win everybody.
When he had an idea, it was Gaylord's idea, and Gaylord was going to make sure it was going to be successful.
He was tough, but what a vision the guy had. He was on the forefront of all that, creating a redevelopment agency and see how you could use that to make your city a better place.
Even when he was no longer with the city and he was at Lake Forest, always identified with Cerritos. So if they were going to retire his jersey, it'd be at the city of Cerritos.
After the city made the decision and the city council supported going after developing an auto mall, we had several people on city staff that were key in that.
Gaylord Knapp hired me, and he basically said you have 3 jobs to get done while you're here. Job number 1 was to expand the redevelopment project areas, to write the general plan for the city, and to develop what he called an auto mall. And no one really knew what an auto mall was, although he felt that he wanted to generate a revenue-producing commercial area that was equal to or greater than the Los Cerritos Center, and to get rid of the cows. He saw that the only way to go forward was to have the cows relocated.
We had 2 dealerships selling just a few cars a month. S&J Chevrolet and Jim Snow Ford. They're both on South Street, but they were blocks and blocks away from each other.
He saw the revenue that S&J Chevrolet was generating for the city, and they were a small operation at that point, so they weren't, doing what dealers do now. He also had seen what dealers were doing elsewhere, and so he said, go find the dealers. And I said, what do you mean go find the dealers? He said, convince them that what we are going to do is going to benefit them, and if it benefits them, we will generate money for the city.
The economy when we started this in the middle 70s was in the doldrums, and we needed to do something because there was no dealers willing to move.
So when the idea came up with this 5 acres and 10 acres and anything in between.
They received an opportunity to buy the property, and with the property they would buy, they did not have to pay interest on the loan.
We went to S&J Chevrolet first because we knew that if we could get one dealer over here, the rest of the dealers would come. S&J was not prepared to move quickly. We decided we'd look for other dealers first. And the first dealer we found was Browning Oldsmobile, Kent Browning. His father owned the company. He was getting ready to take over the company.
When I got in the business, it was a struggle. Number one was a struggle with the franchise we had. Number two was a struggle with the location we were in. We were in downtown Long Beach, 12 blocks from the ocean, so I remember drawing a circle around the map when half of it was blue, and that was the ocean. Downtown Long Beach in 1975, when I went to work there, was a tough place to be.
And he basically came in there to kind of convince my grandpa to shut the doors.
My father could have retired comfortably, probably in Long Beach, but I told him I can't envision spending the rest of my career at 1227 Long Beach Boulevard. It was a war zone down there.
And my grandpa, fortunately, was very stubborn. He was a stubborn salesman, and he said, no, I'm not going to do it.
The Oldsmobile business in 1975 was anything but good. Matter of fact, the Oldsmobile Tornado, I think, was the worst fuel economy car in the country. We were trying to sell them.
We got Bob Stevens, and he was Datsun. He was over in Lakewood. We got Lou Webb to move out of Hawaiian Gardens. That didn't take much.
The other dealer was Norm Reeves Honda. And at that time, we were dealing with Donna Reeves.
Honda motorcycle dealership that they owned was in Bellflower, and the car was kind of an add-on to that in a little showroom. And they had moved into what was an abandoned Ford dealership.
But she got very interested in it.
It was easier as you got along in the process because the dealers, they understood that we wanted them. We had something special.
Did I know a lot about Cerritos in 1977, 78 when they made the initial contact? I can't say I did. I'd been to the Cerritos Mall. That was the first Nordstrom, I think, in Southern California, was in Cerritos. So I was familiar with it, but if they hadn't called us, would I have called them? I doubt it.
We wanted them to be successful. And so part of that was when it came to negotiating with them, for the price of the land and so forth, I tried very hard to convince them that what I was proposing, what we were proposing and so forth, was fair.
And the key to success, I still say to this day, was getting Mr. Browning to move off of Long Beach Boulevard after 40 years down there.
And he had my older sister really, really young, so he was away working hard, just trying to make the business survive. And when this opportunity came up, they pounced on it pretty quickly. It was a big risk, of course.
When you're making no money selling cars and you got to spend anything for land, for my father, it was a big number. For me, it was a big number. I had to figure out a way to pay for it. And the city, they carried the purchase price back interest-free for 4 or 5 years.
Instead of just being on Long Beach Boulevard, or Bellflower Boulevard, we're here on Studebaker. All of you within this 100 acres that I got. Well, I don't got it. I didn't have it yet. I had to worry about, acquiring the land, going to the dairy farmers and basically saying, hey, we're going to buy your land.
There was 100 acres of dairies on these 2 streets, and we wanted to put in curb, gutter, sidewalk, etc. So we bought the property piece by piece.
We are knocking on dairy farmers' doors.
And I didn't really understand about cows and anything. I did go to their barns with my suit on and so forth.
Yeah, it wasn't a hard sell to them, but it was more what they could negotiate.
And they didn't deal with lawyers. And so here I am, this young kid knocking on the door and saying, I want to buy your land.
The Auto Square was this close to becoming an Arnold Palmer pitch and putt driving range.
I mean, they were still dismantling the dairies the first time we came out here. I mean, we built on a dairy that was owned by a gentleman named Jake Knievel-Bard.
Mr. Knievel-Bard was the one negotiating with Arnold Palmer on the pitch and putt.
I think he was the spokesman for maybe for the dairymen. I don't think he was the biggest landholder.
He was a true dairyman. He loved his cows. On one occasion, he invited me over, had me come in his house and put on these rubber up to the chest boots. And he said, I want to show you my property. I want to show you what you're buying from me. And he took me out into the pastures of these cows. They weren't pastures, they were 3 foot deep of cow manure. Another occasion he said, my cows are worth more than any car that you will sell. But he really believed it.
Dealing with the dairymen, God bless them, only talked to them in the morning and only at 10:30 because that was in between the milkings.
And at that time, selling their properties meant that if they didn't want to sell their property, we would use eminent domain and condemn their properties. So this was a pretty aggressive move on the part of the city. However, I think the dairymen were as smart as we were in that they saw the potential value that their cows were to us.
We were fair, and I will use that word frequently and had an instance later on with the General Motors people of this understanding of what it means to be fair as opposed to grinding.
We had a couple of friendly eminent domains, but that was all what's called friendly, whether both sides agreeing, but no, there was no hostile. It was all done because we paid the right price that they wanted.
They didn't sign all on the dotted line at the same time. It went over a period of time.
They were not required to leave. So as they wished to move, because urbanization kept encroaching on them, we would negotiate with them and buy the property.
Most of the dairies moved out to Chino, so they got paid one time. They got to Chino, and Chino relocated many of them up to the San Joaquin Valley. So I think they were relocated 2 or 3 times and financially reaped the rewards of them having dairies and then ultimately losing the opportunity to have dairies in the communities they were in. The next order of business, believe it or not, was to figure out what the design of this center was going to look like.
Back then, there was no real image facility for the manufacturers. Every dealer could kind of build what they wanted. Well, Gaylord's like, I like New Orleans.
And I said, send me to New Orleans and I'll take some pictures and we'll get the design down. And he said, we can't afford sending you to New Orleans. I said, well, there's another place you can send me, and that's to Disneyland.
I was sort of surprised at New Orleans thing because Cerritos is a long way from New Orleans.
It was a little hokey, quite frankly. I remember asking someone from the city, what do you mean by New Orleans architecture? And the comment was, you go out to Disneyland and go to New Orleans Square, that's kind of what we want the buildings to look like.
And the city required that dealers all adopt the same architectural design.
So that was part of the buy-in. They all had to kind of look alike, and we all bought in.
We wanted to make it more into a pedestrian-oriented place where someone could come buy a car and be able to walk from one dealer to the next.
There's no fences in between dealerships. We allow the people to roam freely back and forth so that they can pick and choose and they don't have to move their car every time they want to go to another franchise. That was a big innovation.
You could go to the Datsun dealership, and then if you wanted to go over to Oldsmobile, there was a driveway. You didn't even have to go out on the street, and you could drive over to the next dealership.
There's a lot of landscaping along the street, okay? A lot of grass. There's a meandering walkway. It's not just a straight walkway.
Required landscaping and beautification. That was also some big innovation.
We tried to design it as if it was a residential community.
It was a relationship location, and keeping that unique kind of friendly theme of the design of the buildings and the layout of the properties, I think that had a lot of influence to that, how a consumer or a customer feels as they come into the Auto Square.
There probably is a little haunted mansion in everything we have here.
This is originally going to be, rather than the Cerritos Auto Square, this is going to be the Cerritos Auto Emporium. And we talked them out of that idea. We got to the Cerritos Auto Square concept.
And it actually came out of several reasons. One, because the area that we were in was a square area. So square came out of it. New Orleans Square, so we took it from that. And the last was, Gaylord felt this way. Didn't like the term auto mall. He says that's just the same old thing over and over again. He says we got to come up with a new name.
That's the mall, he'd say. This is the Auto Square. His mighty little stand. That's the mall. This is the Auto Square.
Well, I mean, we had this thing, and the reception that we got was, we want to be here. And there's more land. What are you going to do with the other one? We're not going back and putting apartments in between these people.
In the early days, every manufacturer wanted 8.5 acres per dealer. You know, no dual points, which means no selling an Oldsmobile and a Mercedes or whatever kind of car it would be. So everyone had to have their own building and storage and things like that.
The dealer said, you can never have a dealership without a fence. You need to corral the people so that you work with them to sell them. And that was a tough sale. Trees and landscaping. Why would you take up space when you could instead of move that tree and put a parking space in?
They got it. And when they said you're nuts, that's when you try to, put a Chrysler product with a Mazda product, that kind of thing. So they had to work sort of through that.
You know, this word fair, I believe so firmly in trying to be fair. And I remember particularly when one of the General Motors lawyers was talking, one of the other dealers and their lawyers, and this was one of the highest compliments I got. Basically, as I recall, the lawyer, at some point you got to trust people, and Ken was someone that we trusted.
It was difficult for the first 2 or 3 years. Jimmy Carter got elected. Everything was in turmoil, quite frankly.
The economy went to heck in a handbasket, and no one wanted to buy cars. The dealers didn't want to move. There were foreclosures, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, we were the second store in Cerritos behind the Chevrolet store. We were halfway finished building the building in Cerritos. The big Ford store across the street, which was the main attraction back then, they ended up closing the doors. They boarded the thing up in mid-1980. I'll never forget when my father came into my office and said, "What have you done to me?"
They had to rely on good luck and their faith in the concept and hope like hell that it turned into something, because they all took on some deep debt to be here.
I remember trying to figure out a way to shave $10 off the building here and there. My father put it pretty much all on the line at a point in his career when he probably didn't have to, so I'll commend him for that. I didn't have a lot to put on the line other than my career, and I was going to make it work no matter what. December 26, 1980. I drafted everybody in the family to move cars from Long Beach out here. S&J Chevrolet was the only other dealership here when we opened, and they were probably the sleepiest Chevrolet store in the country. It was Browning, Oldsmobile, Isuzu, it was S&J Chevrolet, and there's cows running around on the other side of the street. There was a lot of trepidation. I think I worked 72 days in a row one time when we first moved in here. Moving to Cerritos was like moving to the other side of the Rocky Mountains in 1980. It was a long ways away. Getting the customers to understand that Cerritos wasn't as far away as they thought it was. We had a mix-up with the Yellow Page advertising. We spent the first 12 months out here without a Yellow Page advertising.
And these guys were just, trying to make a go at it through some very challenging time in the early 80s.
So the interest rates were 20%, floor plan rate. Cars were glued to the ground, it seemed like. I used to drive on the lot and look at every one of those cars. It was costing $5 a day to sit there. And $5 a day was a lot of money in 1980.
The trucks weren't selling very well, the Datsun trucks. And so they came up with a 8.8% interest on the trucks. Well, interest rates were 18, 19%, so 8.8 was just phenomenal. And we just, all of a sudden, we blew through all the trucks.
First couple of years, we were making money, but we weren't making a lot. We were making enough to pay the interest bills, and I couldn't live on what I was making back there today for sure, but we did what we had to do.
I mean, I remember sitting in a room with Donna Reeves. At the time, they were paying probably $1,500 a month for the location in Bellflower. There was no talk about Honda superstores or, Honda hadn't caught on yet, just like Datsun hadn't really caught on.
I convinced Mrs. Reeves to take the parcel next door.
But it was a bold move then to move to this new, expensive construction, fancy auto square. I think that she paid around $2.70 a foot for the dirt, which was a lot at the time. It's not much now. And I think the construction was several $1 million.
I mean, it was a big decision for some of these dealers that, had their small place, they're making a lot of money, no overhead, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, it's gonna cost what to build? What? My overhead is gonna be what?
All these were big, bold moves to come to this auto square, which was really, at the time, a complete experiment.
When the auto square started filling up, when the Toyota store moved from Hawaiian Gardens, when the Honda store moved in here, it became the place to be as far as selling cars in Southern California.
The Cerritos Honda store is the #1 Honda store in the world. They sell several hundred cars a week out of this franchise. Coming up with the concept and doing what we did and moving her to the 5 acres was another blessing that occurred.
We have something that we didn't understand how successful it was going to be.
We had big openings with each of the franchises.
Well, this dealership was actually built in, or the grand opening was 1982, so it was a little over a year before I showed up. And there were still many photos around of the gala opening, and it was a Mardi Gras themed big time party that Donna Reeves put on, and all of the Reeves girls, all 3 girls and Donna were all in terrific costume. It was a big, big deal, and that was the way I think several of these deals opened, you know, to big review.
One of the biggest ones we had was Lexus. It's owned by a gentleman by the name of Lou Webb, who passed, God rest his soul. He was just a real gentleman. He put this giant party on for everyone in the community, and it was black tie, and it was quite an event.
You know, we had the growing pains.
I mean, Cerritos had a very restrictive sign ordinance back then.
The next big battle was the sign, advertising the Cerritos Auto Square. Oh my gosh.
They were very hesitant to put the Auto Square sign up.
We had height restrictions in the city, you know, and I obviously strongly supported it because of what do you got this beautiful Auto Square? You don't want anybody to know it's right on the 605 freeway.
We basically told them we had to have some flexibility to put up a sign to say that we're here selling cars.
There was a lot of environmental folks that were upset about it. But at the end of the day, that, again, made the difference. I mean, obviously, the people that live on the other side of the Auto Square, you know, we had to deal with test driving through the neighborhoods, okay? Big issue. You got more traffic, and it's neighborhood traffic, and you got little kids and noise from the Auto Square and how you deal with that. You know, we did all the normal things that you had to do, but at the end of the day, everyone seemed to come together or rally around it.
And then we said to them, if you come here, you must belong to an auto association. Well, that was just taboo.
Well, they're pretty independent dudes, right? I mean, they're very independent. They like to do their own advertising, do this.
The city had CC&Rs, which exist yet today, that required monthly meetings of the dealers. It required a combined association advertising budget on a monthly basis.
And then they could go do their own thing, but as an Auto Square, so that we started off as Cerritos Auto Square.
We all bought into the concept of getting together as a group of dealers and advertising Cerritos Auto Square as a place to come.
They formed their own association out there. That's not to say there weren't battles over the years, but at the end of the day, it kept everybody together.
We used to joke about it. We'd say, you check your ego at the door. And you had the Dick Brownings and the Lou Webbs and the Bob Stevens and the Ron Gregoires and all these guys that, you know, really started this.
We were putting huge money into the dealer association to not advertise selling an Oldsmobile back then or selling a Toyota or selling a Honda, selling the Cerritos Auto Square as a place to come and buy a car.
These guys, they really had a sense of camaraderie, and as much as they wanted to beat the guy next to them, they also realized that everybody succeeding was better than just one person succeeding.
Morgan Fry's advertising was in place when I arrived. I think they may have been the first agency that the Auto Square dealers hired.
The car business was, seemed to me, very simple in those days, you know.
We were looking for a way to get the word out. I think we interviewed 3 or 4 different ad agencies, and although they had a relationship with the Toyota store, they knew the car business, they knew Cerritos.
How do you advertise for 23 different makes without putting one make ahead of the other? You know, that was the challenge.
Who are the customers, you know, and what are the majority enjoying in life and things, because they're all buying cars.
You know, Vern, it's hard to be upwardly mobile, especially when your car won't start.
605 Freeway at South Street.
Ernest was one of the best ad campaigns this Auto Square ever had.
It was the general manager of the Nissan dealer.
A guy by the name of Steve Kinney, I think, had some knowledge of them.
My creative director comes in with this tape of Ernest and Vert. And I'm going, oh boy, here we go again, Scott.
Didn't you see James Spann's pinpoint weather forecast on Channel 4? Golly, Bob, howdy, Vern. That James has got him a computer. He's calling for a 50% chance of rain.
There was about 6 dealers, I say, and we took it in there, and Scott, he said, this is gonna work.
Yeah, I can imagine the first time we saw Varney, he said, who is this nut, you know? And we probably had to go home and think about it. Give us a time out from this stuff.
Time to strike. Let the soft thunder belly of Cerritos Auto Square.
Take advantage of them before it all ends.
We got in touch with, I think it was Cardin & Cherry was the advertising agency that handled us.
He had humor, everybody owns a car out here, everybody could relate, and it was all about how you could beat up a salesperson and you can get a better deal at the Cerritos Auto Square.
I got a kick out of him. Some people thought I was corny.
If the market can handle Cal Worthington and his dog Spot, which was really a tiger, I think that Varney would not be over the top.
They're just a bunch of wimps during the last 10 days. Now, honey, I know you're in a hurry to get to Cerritos Auto Square, but you've got to let that one soak.
605 Freeway at South Street.
They were impactful, they were memorable, campy, really campy.
Friends made fun of me a little bit in growing up because they knew what we did, especially when we came up with our own jingles.
We wanted people to come shop, look at the cars.
It was a little far out. It wasn't tasteless, but it wasn't top drawer taste either.
There's your problem right there, Vern. That little wire on your catastrophic converter looks like it's got a little...
We go to the dealer meeting and what the earners and they'd crack up in there. They'd say, perfect, perfect, perfect.
We'd be rolling on the floor with some of the stuff we bring.
You always left here with a smile on your face thinking, doggone it, that's the best they've done.
In the early days, I wasn't a big believer in sort of the corniness of the Jim Varney ads. But by the time I attended meetings and had a voice in those meetings, I was becoming a big fan.
It's like buying a new car for an old price. Oh, look, Vern, it's me and old Santa Claus.
Could that be Santa's little helper?
What up, cute little lad?
I remember having people call me and said, how could you have this guy represent you as a group of dealers? I said, I'll tell you why, because people are going to remember this group of dealers when they think about buying a car.
He was so animated in everything during the shoot. But you sit down with him and talk, he was a low-key individual, nothing like that.
This character, it's so successful. Have you sat back at all and analyzed? I mean, you told me earlier you've done like 800 commercials.
Yeah, right around 800.
Why do you think he's so successful?
I think everybody identifies with him. They either have a neighbor or a relative that's like that. They've always got a better deal than you've got, or they tell you what you did wrong. And so I think everybody knows him.
It's the only instance I can remember where you would make somebody a star from being an auto pitchman.
He grew on Disney, ended up becoming a Disney star.
Maybe it's because of the Cerritos roots as being Dairy Valley. We locally here identified with it.
Right when we were splitting up from the Auto Square, and Kent Browning was the president. Kent and I got along well, and he said, did you know that Jim Varney's got a real problem, lung cancer? I said, no, nobody told me. They didn't want to get rid of him, but they had to, so they had to go because he couldn't do it anymore.
He honored his commitments to us for a long time. He unfortunately passed away at an early age.
Definitely was a great actor and a great combination for the Auto Square.
He helped build the brand, which is Cerritos Auto Square.
The manufacturer saw the Auto Square as the ultimate.
And they came out and physically looked. People park their car, and maybe they went to look for a Toyota, but they wind up buying a Buick.
If a guy walked out of your showroom and didn't buy a car, he's going to walk next door. Somebody here will sell him a car.
If you're not in the Auto Square, you just will not achieve the level of success that you're looking for.
I mean, what the hell, you got Norm Reeves here, and the others around advertised the largest, the biggest.
When I was here as a salesman in 1984, Honda only expected 1,200 units a year out of this location. So think of the surprise they must have experienced when we drove it to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000.
And other people recognized that I want to be part of that also.
B-level brand that Mazda was, they weren't Ford or Chevy. They were fighting to get into the square.
3 years ago, we did 10,013 new Hondas out of this one dealership.
My job as a very young lad, as a 24-year-old guy, was looking at opportunities to bring Mazda brand into the Cerritos Auto Square.
Official entrance to Cerritos, California, Bobby Knievel. It's a dramatic entrance for world-famous motorcycle daredevil, Bobby Knievel.
I was asked to prepare a plan that I think Robbie Knievel used in an effort to perform his famous jump here at the Cerritos Auto Square.
1992 in February, and Jack McDonald was the general manager working for my uncle at the Datsun dealership, Nissan dealership. You know, he was a promoter, and he knew if more people came in, then we'd sell more cars. And he talked Robbie into doing this jump, and the way it worked was he was going to start right at the street by the flagpole and come through the service drive, and then he was jumping over Nissan pickup trucks.
I think there was a lot of pushback on that, to be honest, because I think the dealers were worried about something going wrong, and I think they were also worried about the way it would close the traffic to the square. You know, it was really quite a spectacle, right?
The day of the jump, and when he went through the service drive, the concrete was not very clean, and he didn't get the traction that he needed to get to the speed that he needed.
Robbie Knievel today is recovering from a motorcycle mishap. The son of the legendary daredevil Evel Knievel yesterday attempted a world record leap over 25 pickup trucks. He failed, however, to gain enough speed to complete the 180-foot jump.
I remember that he crashed, got carried away in an ambulance, I think.
Fortunately, the only thing that he had was some splinters, all right, where he'd slid into the second ramp.
Deep in the back of my mind, I wonder if my plan had anything to do with it.
We had fences around our area because we had to make it clear for him to jump. Well, all other people went into the other dealerships and they had a great weekend. Our weekend was terrible.
I understand why the Cerritos Auto Square is #1, and it largely has to do with its location.
The geography is part of the biggest success.
People ask where Cerritos is, and I go, well, it's halfway between the ocean and the mountains, and right between Orange County and LA County.
I haven't heard a population count recently, but there were something like 7.5 million people within 25 miles of here. That's a jackpot. And guess what? They all need cars.
In normal times, people still drive all over Southern California to save $50 on a Saturday afternoon. But we give them an opportunity to see 6 or 7 and 8, 15 different brands in one location. I still think that's a drawing card.
The geography is not going to change. There's always going to be great traffic, but the importance and the magic for the future is that the dealers continue to understand and respect the importance of working together.
Remember I said the most important thing we did was set up an association.
The magic of Cerritos Auto Square is when everybody gets together in the meetings that we have and gives input.
Number one is good people. They're friends of mine. Number two, you learn a lot.
It's business, it's pleasant, it's enjoyable. The dealers share, they drop their guard. We're not competing when we're in the room. We work together to try to send out a consistent message.
The history of those meetings and thinking back to the iconic guys that were in those early days.
I'm the last of the Mohicans. Nobody's been here longer than I have. I've seen 30 different owners probably over the years.
And egos have always been part of being an auto dealer, right? But when you'd get to the Auto Square Association meeting and people would walk through that door, every single dealer, in spite of their personal success and wealth, parked their egos at the door, and they came in and met as equals for the benefit of the Auto Square.
I attend quite a few of the meetings. When they need something, I come to the meetings. We have a staff member that comes to the meetings from the city.
We're not necessarily perceived as an outsider. We're considered to be part of the group, and it's always been that way, so we appreciate that.
It's been a big chunk of a lot of dealers' ad budget for years. There's always been a tendency by one or two to say, why do I need to do this? Well, I think we're all in or we're not all in. If somebody elects not to get in, I'd hate to think the thing might fall apart, but it might.
We are able to leverage the marketing dollars that we all put together and also the marketing dollars that this store puts in on their own behalf. It drives traffic here.
We are friendly competitors once we leave this room. The benefit probably goes to the consumer because they really do have a lot of options in a very small space.
If you're going to be in the Auto Square, you're part of the association. When I found that out, I thought, that city of Cerritos, that was a pretty smart idea.
The Auto Square has become an entity in its own right, and it is a brand, and it's a recognized brand.
If it wasn't for the Cerritos Auto Square, nobody knows what Cerritos is.
When we came up with the name Cerritos Auto Square, and when that sign went up on the freeway, everybody knew at that point what Cerritos was, where it was, and that it was a community to be reckoned with.
I mean, we've been on South Park episodes, we've been on Simpsons episodes.
There is a current Star Trek series, and I think one of the ships is named USS Cerritos. I think it has ties to the Cerritos Auto Square and its popularity.
That shows the depth that this brand and this association of rivals, quite frankly, but we get together to make it happen together.
And hopefully one day I get to ride it.
The manufacturer always has a different perspective than the dealers do. They don't really understand what happens there, they just know it does.
So we were the first facility to rebuild to Toyota's current image. So we were the location that Toyota would send Japanese executives, dealers wanting to visit an automotive environment.
They use their dealers in the Auto Square as kind of an indicator of what's going on in the whole market. Most of the dealers today are requested by our manufacturers to let them know, hey, how did the Square do this weekend?
I measure this store 3 ways: Honda's district numbers, Honda's zone numbers, and I also measure it in the Auto Square numbers. It's that big of a deal.
There's a level of expectation within our company about being in the Auto Square. I'm the only Ford store within Dave's group of dealerships with Norm Reeves. I get compared to every top performing Ford store in Southern California, as I should. But many times our conversations have concluded with, well, you're the only one in the Square.
It's a highly competitive environment. Your closest competitor is 100 feet away.
We don't intentionally come out kind of cross-advertise to try to take from one another.
You have to be on your toes the whole time.
That's one of the things you learn through the years of the Square. We let a customer make that decision, right? We want them in the car that best suits them. And if it's an Acura, then that's the best suit for them, because I'm gonna have another customer shortly to talk to.
So you have more dealers in the same area, not compete to each other, actually help each other.
We do look out for each other when the unfortunate times when there's thefts and stuff, we tell each other.
Very important, and we take seriously the responsibility to have a good reputation for the benefit of the other dealers in the Square. And I expect that of them.
Once saw a guy from X store driving 110 miles an hour down the freeway in a brand new car. I called the GM and he was grateful that I made that call.
I would be really angry if somebody did something that got them in the news, some illegal business practice or something like that, because I don't want my dealership associated with that. I don't want the Auto Square's wonderful image tarnished in any way.
We have each other's cell phone numbers, we make phone calls, refer each other customers that want, someone wants a Jeep, they refer them to me. If someone wants a Kia, I refer them to Herbie down the street.
May the best man win, the best car sell, but there's enough business for all of us.
It's a small city, but you know what? That's where the partnership comes in. The city knows the tax revenue from the shopping mall and from the Auto Square helps make them successful.
Oftentimes, it's a great relationship. There's times where they try to push the envelope, but at the end of the day, it's a very productive relationship.
Through our dealerships, as an example, we reserve money out of every car sale that goes into a fund which was specifically created to support public schools.
And the city has been helpful in us gaining parking and helping us work with Edison on lots, and we have a great relationship with them.
We are their partner. When they make money, we make money. And we still need to make that money to pay for law enforcement. We still need that money to pay for water and sewer.
At an early age, we're taught, and the planners that were there before me, the planners that will be there after me, all understand the importance and value of the Auto Square.
Cooperation between the dealers, the city of Cerritos is residents. Residents here try to support the Square. It's a team effort.
They don't come asking very often, but there is a lot of participation. When the city has an event, if it's a 4K or 5K running event and they look for sponsorship, the dealers are always quick to jump in and help out.
We have our performing arts centers the shows are about to start. The Dealers Association just contributed $10,000 to offset one of our shows.
I was involved in the Cerritos Center for the Performing Arts, the Friends, and what we would do is we would gather money and go send school buses to ABC School District, bus the people in so that they could see the performances, because a lot of these kids, they take away the arts programs and things like that.
We're big on contributing toy drives, etc. Anything that might come up, they'll reach out to us.
They understand and appreciate the businesses as well as the residents of the city. They work very hard at it, they really do. And for such a small city, they punch way above their weight.
It's pretty amazing how auto dealership sales have changed over the years. And Cerritos Auto Square has followed those changes.
The New Orleans retro look was very dated. It was time to upgrade the store.
They were very proud of their New Orleans themed architectural design, and they didn't want to go away from that. And for a period of time, when Honda was coming to us and saying, we want you to spend $5 million remaking the look of your dealership, we could hide behind the city's requirements and say, not allowed.
It's people, place, and process. Place is very important.
It was Dave Conant who finally convinced Art Gallucci that, look, the manufacturers have a specific look. It will work with the area. It's very appropriate.
Explain to them the importance of us being part of that wave and that new look. And they quickly reversed their position.
The majority of that was done in collaboration with the dealerships, the owners, the general managers, to ensure that we established a very architecturally pleasing aesthetic.
I think Gaylord, if he were around today and he was looking back, he'd probably want to know why the New Orleans style has not endured.
If you look at a couple stores, you can still see the old mansard roof behind the new facade.
Not only are these nice, well-run dealerships and businesses, they look good, they are good.
So people do still shop cars. Is it as much as it was in 1990? No, way different.
There's so much being done online that there's a virtual experience of your own dealership.
People come in now, they know exactly what they want, they know exactly the options they want, and they'll know exactly how much those options cost. And you better not try to pull it over their eyes.
So when they come down here, you need to understand where they're at in their fact-finding, in their investigation, connect with that, complement that, and then bring them into the showroom experience.
The Auto Square has been progressively becoming more and more current, right? The Auto Square was a magnet for people to drive miles and miles to reach. Now we reach out miles and miles to people.
I will say a lot of people come still kick tires. Drive into my Acura store, I'm gonna drive a Acura MDX. So you know what? I really want to go drive the Lexus RX 350 across the street. So there is still that value.
So the people that do business here are really well cared for and treated with a great deal of respect. And I think that is a great asset for a community to have a group of dealers like that.
Through Gaylord and the team, we were able to generate a revenue program for the city that no one has been able to match. There are cities that make lots more money, but on a per capita basis, there's no city that can match Cerritos. And as a result of that, the city's been able to implement projects and programs that they would never have been able to do because of the financial resources not being available.
That sales tax revenue, that's a major part of the budget. I mean, that provides for library and police and planning, and parks, the kind of programs that we had for parks and for children, for goodness sakes. Those weren't possible unless you have the revenue from it.
We wouldn't have 26 parks in this city without the Auto Square and the mall.
You go look at our Cerritos Center for Performing Arts, okay? One of the nicest performing arts centers probably in the country. It's not a moneymaker, but the city has developed and invested for that.
Our budget operation for the city is $120 million. So that amount of money has to be raised on an annual basis.
The dealers contribute to about 12% to 11% of the entire operating cost of the city. The most important one is that of law enforcement, and they essentially cover that entire cost.
There are more cars being sold today than ever before. As long as those cars keep selling, that means more tax for the city. More tax for the city means better services, better facilities, better parks, more amenities, a lifestyle that everybody enjoys.
But I think that the most important thing not only is tax generation, but job creation.
Yes, it's our largest employer in the city. I believe that in UPS.
We have almost 5,000 employees that are employed by the dealers within the auto mall.
We employ 1,400 people through our dealerships. If you think about the number of people who report to work here for good paying jobs with good benefits and good security, and all of the people in those homes that they go home to and the mouths that we feed, there's a lot of benefit that flows into the community.
We have employees in this square and team members that the effort that they put in, it's not a casual effort. They work very hard to produce the results they do.
All of that works together. It's harmonious. The number of employees are critical. It brings jobs to the region, and the region is important, so we provide regional work. We get the sales tax, but the entire region gets the regional work.
The way that it's been for the last 20 years is not the way it'll be for the next 20.
I hear from time to time new dealers coming in, some buildings being sold, new dealers taking over those buildings, expansion of brands. So it's constantly growing, and it will constantly grow in the future.
Who would ever thunk it when we started out in this thing that we'd have all these foreign cars in here? I mean, all the other ones that are gone. You know, Dick Browning brought his Oldsmobile. That was the key to success, but long gone, right?
One of the problems at the end was we didn't have any more land. That's all there is.
We try to expand the surrounding area, so we'll welcome new dealers come to Cerritos.
We recently approved an overlay zone which extends the auto square further north.
Dealerships will shrink in size. I think that the transaction cycle time will become much quicker. More people will have more of the transaction completed before they come in for delivery.
I think there's also an interest and perhaps a need for dealers to start looking at infrastructure to support electronic vehicles.
We're a very resilient group, and if we are given information by our manufacturers, and if we remain students of the market and students of the industry, we can make these adjustments. They're not going to happen like that. They're going to happen a little at a time, a little at a time, a little at a time, and it may be a faster and faster and faster change pace-wise, but these changes are all manageable, and they're things that we can function through and succeed through. We'll succeed better if we work together.
I think they shouldn't take it for granted. The square is an effort. It's not going to function without their effort, their cooperation, and participation.
This will never end. This is a program that was started almost 50 years ago and will continue being what it is 50 years in the future with different technology, with different designs, with different vehicles, but it will be here forever and ever.
I had a chance to be part of the development of a city.
That, I think, is the legacy that we all leave behind. It's not necessarily everything that we've accomplished in our careers in the form of building awesome developments, designing great projects. At the end of the day, our legacy is what we leave in the form of the education and training for future generations to take advantage of.
It was a challenge, but it was exciting to watch happen, and lucky enough for me to be part of it.
The thing that makes this business model so successful is the relationship with the city. You know, whether it was Gaylord Knapp or Art Gallucci or Don Knabe, you know, they understood that we're a business and there's certain needs that we had, yet there was needs that they had to deal with from the citizens and the people that live around us.
This would not be as successful as it is today if the dealers didn't work together.
It's the only auto square I can point to where there's a combined effort by all the dealers to maintain a message, consistently maintaining a message.
It's important to be inclusive when you're trying to create something and to work with them on how you create that. And then you, as a legislative body, you have to be very disciplined to stay with that program. The rod and comfort in that thing was Gaylord Knapp, you know, forcing us to really be disciplined, not to stray from the plan. And again, I don't think any of us had the idea how successful, how big it was going to get. You know, there's been times it's done $1 billion a year in sales. I mean, this little old city of Cerritos, who ever thought that, right?
We have a #1 auto mall in the world, so you talk about that, you are very proud of it.
People that come back, that come from up to 200 miles away to buy another car for their son, for their cousin, trade in the car that they bought from here, and they travel all that way to do that here at the Auto Square.
The dealers have to be thankful for that too, that they didn't walk away, because they all hit home runs.
It allowed my family to have a great, legacy, and we've employed thousands upon thousands of people. We have people that when working in our store, we had one guy who just retired last year that actually worked on Long Beach Boulevard with us.
Being a dealer, I will tell you, it was the quality of the people that started the Dave Konitz, the Kent Brownings, the Lou Webbs, Bob Stevens. They were truly the best in the business. And for them to have concentrated in this area, it was their foresight to decide that, yes, this is an idea that has legs, that will work. But it all started with the group of dealers themselves.
I think the magic has been that we as a group of dealers got together and recognized that we had a rare opportunity here. Did any of us know it going in? Probably the guys that came in later on saw what a successful concept this was.
From the moment that I first saw the square, I always knew that I really wanted to be part of its long-term future. And when I wasn't here, I longed to get back, and I always thought of it as hallowed ground.
One time I remember having a conversation with Dave Conant, and I asked him, I said, what's the secret to your sauce? You know, why are you so successful? Why were you so successful as a salesman? And he said, just being genuine and being personable and really caring and listening to the customer.
I was at a Honda ad association meeting where all the other Honda dealers were gathered, and Penske's store is right up the street from us, about 5 miles on Studebaker Road, same street. And the general manager at the time was a guy named George Luca. George, since we were kicking his butt so hard every month, decided to try to embarrass me in front of all the other Honda dealers. And he said, "Hey, Conan, I hope you worship the ground in the Cerritos Auto Square." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "It's so easy to sell cars in the Cerritos Auto Square." He said, "Anybody could do it, you know?" And I said, "Well, George, it must be really tough working under that Penske logo as well." But I said, "Actually, the truth is, if you come to Cerritos, you'll see lip prints all over the parking lot next to my parking stall." I do kiss the ground every single day.
If the jingle's good, you're going to remember it, which means you remember the name of whoever is the advertiser.
You tell somebody, "Where do you work?" I go, "Cerritos," and then they sing the jingle. They know it. They've heard it. You know, that really is the magic.
You sing the jingle for me? You know the jingle?
If I had music and if you were to lead me with I'm not a very good singer, but I do recall the jingle.
You guys are big on your jingles here.
Yes, we are big on jingle.
What's the latest one? You got it? You know it for me?
It's simplified. I can't sing the jingle for you anymore. I can't. We just changed it. It's simplified, and I don't have it on the tip of my tongue. I'm sorry.
I'll give my dad a lot of credit. We did not talk shop around the dinner table. My dad was home for dinner, unless there was an obligation, work obligation. He was home for dinner every single night. One thing I do remember is we came up with jingles. If you bring it home from Browning. What's the other one was? Is Browning the best? Boy, I guess. This was back in the day when radio was really big.
You know the jingles off the top of your head?
Well, I'm not a singer, but I do know them, yeah.
605 at South Street. I was trying.
I am not going to sing. I couldn't carry a tune if I had a bucket, but I know all the jingles, and you know, Just Say Yes, I think has been a great campaign. People still miss the old jingle.
The jingle, what's the current jingle?
I don't remember. Well, it's the same. It's yes, Cerritos Auto Square, right? Still, but it's more refined.
Just say yes.
Just say yes.
Cerritos Auto Square. Bam.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get someone to sing it for me. Don Kanabi did.
605 and South Street, Cerritos Auto Square. That's the old one.
There you go. All right, you're done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
We have something to tell you. The Cerritos Auto Square sells more cars than anyone in Southern California, so their customers can save more.
Great. Cerritos Auto Square. At Cerritos Auto Square's big holiday sale, a veritable extravaganza. Yes, Vern? This holiday season, we have a lot to be thankful for. Shall I, Carl? Well, let me lie.